Broadcasting live and around the world. From Cabana One, the only podcast that's all ball bearings. Your ultimate source for everything Fletch.
Moon River. Whew. Thank you, Doc. You ever serve time?
Laker Jim and his beat reporters will stop at nothing to make sure Fletch lives forever. They don't shower much. This is Fletch Cast.
Thank you, Sammy, and welcome everybody back to Fletch Cast. Sammy, you outdid yourself on that intro. I'm your host, Laker Jim. It's a brand new year. And for many, a year of resolutions. A year of reflection. But for Fletch Cast, it's going to be a year of exclusive revelations. Now, before we get started, let me reintroduce my co-hosts. Two men who wear way too much eye makeup, Jake and Big Bob. Boys, it makes you look cheap.
We love it.
Well, thanks very much. You know, the only reason why I wear so much eye makeup is just it distracts from my baldness. So, I mean,
I'm in prison so much that I need to do something to intimidate everybody else.
Well, that's true too.
I'll keep my horse away from you then.
I've definitely moved on from horses. I'm all over the place.
Well, you live in Florida, so you're probably more of a reptile guy now anyway, right?
In Florida, it's practically state law that you have to do it.
Well, I mean, the way Florida's going, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it's like when you go to the voting booth, it's like, how many horses have you molested? It's like, they're like back of the line.
Well, you keep me updated on that, buddy, because I'm looking for a new hobby.
Well, speaking of getting back on the horse, like I mentioned, Fletchcast is back after an extended break, and we've returned with a really exciting episode. Legendary jazzman Tom Scott will be joining us in a few minutes. And as many of you know, Tom was hired to score the soundtrack for Fletch. And for the first time ever, he's going to give his side of the story. Tell us how it fell apart, how Faltermeyer swooped in. And honestly, we have so much to talk to Tom about. I just hope we can fit it all in.
Yeah.
I was blown away when I started doing research. This guy's the real deal. Here's just part of the list. He's collaborated with the Beach Boys, Michael Jackson, Paul McCartney, the Grateful Dead, Whitney Houston, Carole King, Pink Floyd, Frank Sinatra, Eddie freaking Money. There's about 75 I'm forgetting.
That's him. I forgot I connected the hotline to my cell phone.
Oh, that's right. He did the theme to Family Ties.
Loved Family Ties.
I need somebody to help me set up my ringtones.
Wait, do people still use ringtones anymore? Is that still a thing?
No, they don't. In fairness, I made that his ringtone back in 01.
Makes sense.
I better grab this before he hangs up. All right, boys, ready? Joining us today on the podcast, a Grammy Award-winning composer, Mr. Tom Scott. Tom, welcome to Fletchcast.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Now, Fletch fans listening at home, I'm sure you're scratching your heads and thinking, Tom Scott, where have I seen that name? Take a look at your Fletch poster. Rewatch the Fletch trailer. Music by Tom Scott. Now, we're going to get to the bottom of the mystery as to why Tom is associated with the music of Fletch. But Tom's connection to Fletch, Chevy, and this podcast runs much deeper. It's like 6 degrees of separation.
Yes.
Because there's been many times over the course of the first 40 or so episodes where we've turned a corner and run smack dab into Tom Scott.
Yep, that's very true.
But we're gonna get into those connections in a little bit. But Tom, where I wanted to start was, how did you get into music in the beginning? Because as a dad of small kids and owner of a keyboard piano, which hasn't been played, by the way, since they were interested in taking lessons, how did you get started in music? And when should I give up on creating the next Tom Scott?
Never give up. Never, ever give up.
Damn you.
There's always a chance.
All right, I won't.
No. Look, my success was a combination of very fortuitous parents and being in an environment that was very, very friendly to and encouraging. By that, I mean music teachers, high school, junior high school music teachers that were fantastic. But to back up a little bit, my father and mother met when they both worked at NBC Radio on the corner of Sunset and Vine in Hollywood in the 40s.
Your dad, of course, the legendary composer Nathan Scott.
Yes. My father was a tremendous composer, very talented guy who had gotten a science scholarship to Caltech, but left after a year because in his words, he said to me, "Son, I just couldn't keep away from the piano." And so he decided to enroll at Cal Berkeley and got a music degree there, did some writing and composing and stuff. He had a friend who was parking cars at the NBC radio parking lot. So he got a job there parking cars, and all the time was writing arrangements, hoping for a chance to get them played. And he befriended the chief sound engineer, and then managed to get some of his arrangements played in some extra downtime with the NBC orchestra. In 2 years, he was a music director.
Wow, what perseverance!
Yeah,
he went on to amass over 700 film and television composing and arranging credits,
Wow.
which include years. He didn't write the theme of Dragnet. That was a guy named Walter Schumann, but he came in. Walter was very ill with a heart problem, and my dad came in and did all the underscore for the original, the black and white Dragnet series in the 50s. For several years, then went on to become a staff composer at CBS and wrote episodes of, Rawhide, Wagon Train, Laramie, and other shows. And then My Three Sons, wrote all the music for the last 12 years of Lassie when it was on the air, and a bunch of other stuff. So there was always, obviously, there was always music going in my house, and there was always a room which my dad co-opted as a music studio. He had no flair for self-promotion whatsoever. He was just a nice guy. He enjoyed being a family guy. He didn't want to become a celeb or anything like that. After he passed, which is around 2008, I think, I saw John Williams, who was an acquaintance, not a close friend, but an acquaintance. And he came up to me and he said, he was so humble. First thing he said was, "Tom, I don't know whether your father remembered me or not." And I said, "John, I'm quite sure. I didn't ask him, but I will bet money that my father remembered you." He says, "Well, the reason I'm asking you this is because when I was a studio pianist in the 50s, debating whether I wanted to become a film and television composer, to dive into that, that challenge. One of my first assignments was with your father as my supervisor. And one of the reasons that I decided to take the plunge into film composing is that your father was so incredibly kind and encouraging to me." Now, first of all, what a nice thing to say about one's father. But secondly, what if my dad had been an asshole? Who would have done Jaws
or Raiders or anything like
Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Superman? So my dad was, he was a great guy. Everybody adored him. He was all business when he stepped up to the podium and went, ladies and gentlemen, can we have an A from the oboe? Let's go. But anyway, so there was always music going on, and I took up the clarinet in elementary school, and my dad, wanting to, show me the best clarinet player that he knew, he bought me a Benny Goodman record from 10 years before I was born. So I wore that record out, and that sort of the bug had bitten me by then. And then in junior high school, or what they call middle school now, I took up the saxophone. And, the rest, as they say, is history. I started listening to saxophone players that my father had recommended, and ones that I just heard and liked. In those days, it was people like John Coltrane, Cannonball Adderley, Stan Getz, Jerry Mulligan, and others. So by the time I got out of high school, I was working, started to work. Jobs and things. In fact, I think I was 13 or 14 when I did my first, I think it was a bar mitzvah at a country club. Made $15. It was the best $15 I'd ever seen in my life. What, people are going to pay me for this? Oh my God, this is great.
And you worked with your father a few times, didn't you?
I did. Yes.
On projects? Yeah.
Yeah. He, I did a movie called Neighbors with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. That score was also, by the way, dumped for similar reasons. Well, not similar, but reasons that really had nothing to do with the quality of the music. It had to do with outside forces, shall we say. But yeah, that was really a great experience because he had orchestrated a lot of my compositions and he conducted while I was in the booth. So we were a pretty impressive 1-2 punch there for a while. It was great.
That's very, very cool. When I look at your career, you have worked with the absolute royalty of the music industry. Legends. I can only compare your career really to like an onion. As you peel each layer, the next layer is more impressive. And as you keep peeling and peeling, you find just the most incredible collaborations that you've done, the most incredible works, the most incredible situations that you've been in. Do you ever just pinch yourself and think like, wow, what a life and what a career I've had up until this point?
I say to myself, how incredibly lucky I have been in my life. And let's face it, a lot of opportunities that come to all of us. Some of it may be skill, some of it may be, right place, right time, but it's luck, man. Luck is what really drives so much of it. I just hit at the right time, I think, in terms of my playing. Another thing, I had as a film composer, I started in television, of course. What I had going there was, of course, I had my father's, blessing and whatever. He didn't teach me or anything, but if I was working on something and as a teenager trying to figure out some chord or something I was listening to, I could always go to him and he'd say, Dad, what is this? And he'd show me. So that was great having that. These opportunities have a lot to do with just being lucky, being at the right place at the right time. And I was going to say, when I first came on as a composer, and I had also the recommendation of Dave Grusin, who got me one of my very first television scoring assignments for a television show called Dan August, which was on in the late 60s with a then unknown actor named Burt Reynolds. And it was a typical cop show. And I, of course, had, as a composer, had also embraced the R&B, or the world of R&B and jazz and so on. And that was thanks to, started with Hank Mancini actually doing Peter Gunn.
Mm-hmm. Pink Panther.
The jazz kind of came into the fold. And then, but I was kind of the young, I had the funk thing going on. So I used to say for those shows like Dan August and later ones, I was the Law and Order funk composer.
Well, Starsky and Hutch has that funk.
It does. Yeah, it's
definitely. I mean, da-da-da, da-da. I love
it. Does indeed.
Starsky and Hutch.
You know what's cool about you, and maybe it's just playing the sax because the sax player is just inherently cool, right?
Yeah.
And
all the ladies gravitate towards the sax player, probably that and the singer.
If anyone hasn't listened, Tom has a podcast, Tom Scott's Podcast Express. I recommend checking it out. I binged it. I went there looking for information about Tom. And this is part of why you're cool, because cool people don't brag about their life. And you have every right to brag all day long. I wanted just episodes about you.
Right.
But when you listen to your episodes and you have guests like Jim Belushi or Vanessa Williams or even Ed Begley Jr., I was wondering okay, what does he have to do with jazz or music or Tom's life?
Right.
And you realize these incredible stories unfold about your life with these guests. It's you and Ed running around with Belushi and I enjoyed the hell out of it. I really did. Every episode, I feel like you earn a piece to the puzzle of your amazing life and career. And believe me, it's one of those 10,000 piece puzzles.
Well, I appreciate that. It has been proposed that I do a podcast of myself, and maybe I will one of these days.
Speaking of Jim Belushi, which was my favorite one that you did.
Oh, good.
We're big Blues Brothers fans.
Huge Blues fans.
Yes.
I mean, check this out. I even have an Elwood tattoo.
Oh, man, look at
I don't have one of those to match, but
Before we get into Fletch, can you talk to us a little bit about how you got into the Blues Brothers?
Sure. Sure. That's quite a funny story, actually. Of course, I happened to see the Saturday Night Live episode. I was a big fan, like everybody else my age, I think. Their first appearance as a bit on Saturday Night Live when they came out and sang for the first time with what became the Blues Brothers. It wasn't even named that yet, but what I learned later was that the look that Dan and the suits and the ties and the hats and the sunglasses, they were actually doing kind of a riff on Roy Orbison, who dressed kind of that way. Having seen that, I then read in the paper so of course that's all in New York. I'm in LA, and I read in the paper that the Blues Brothers are coming to Los Angeles to play a week opening for Steve Martin at the Universal Amphitheater. I'm like, oh my God, I got to get into that. I did know two of the musicians from the Saturday Night Live band, Lou Marini.
Lou.
Or shall I say Blue Lou Marini.
Yeah.
And Tom Bones Malone, who were both friends of mine. So I thought, geez, maybe I'll call one of those guys and see if I can, just get backstage. I'd love to. Also, I wouldn't mind meeting three of the hottest comics in America. That would be cool. So turns out I didn't have to, because Tom Malone calls me one day, I guess a couple of weeks before the engagement, and says, look, Tom, my wife is scheduled to have a baby right in the middle of that week that we're doing at Universal Amphitheater. Could you sub for me and I'll come in on probably Wednesday. I'll get in Wednesday, but if you could do Monday, Tuesday, that'd be great. I say, absolutely. So I show up on the Monday for the run through the sound check and rehearsal. And John and Danny were very nice, and the band was great. I especially loved the drumming of Steve Jordan, and we have remained friends for all this time. We talk quite frequently still. Obviously, Paul Schaefer, a walking encyclopedia of all things pop music, and can rattle them off in a second, which is why he was such a good MD for Letterman all those years. Right. And, and Cropper and Duck Dunn and all them. And the horn section, fantastic. Alan Rubin was so funny. It's so dry, like sarcastic humor, which he just drop in every now and then.
No, sir. Mayor Daley no longer dines here. He's dead, sir.
Just kept you in stitches, It was just a hoot. So we get done with the rehearsal. I play the gig, have a ball. I come back Tuesday and do the same thing. And then Wednesday, I expect to go and just kind of hand it off back to Tom Malone. Oh, one other thing. Okay, I'll do this in order. So, right. I'm going to hand it off back to Tom Malone at the amphitheater. And I walk in and I see John. And I said, yeah, I'm here to just, say thanks and everything and hand it back to Malone. And he says, well, listen, let's just make it 4 horns instead of 3. Tom, you're a blues brother.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Originated by the Chips and sung by the Blues Brothers Band back in 1979. Tommy Scott, Blues Brother, right here. There he is. Thank you, gentlemen.
And with that pronouncement, what I found out later is that he'd actually consulted with Bernie Brillstein to make sure the money thing was okay. And that's the other thing I got. So no one had spoken anything about money, and you don't want to ask other band members what they're getting, because who knows what the deal is with each one of them. They may have different deals or the same deal, but it's not cool to do that. So I thought that I would have a moment where I could talk about money with John. I didn't know who else to go to. So on that day, I guess it was the next day, the Thursday or something, I brought my road manager, my tour manager, Jim Root, a great guy who had been with Cheech and Chong, and that's how I met him. And he was just a cool guy and a real road rat, perfect. So I show up with him, and I thought maybe there's a moment where John and Jimmy and I are alone, and maybe Jimmy can talk about the subject, because I don't like doing that. So that moment occurs. There's a lull in our conversation, and Jim Root says, Well, Tom usually gets triple scale, meaning whatever union scale is for any particular gig, like 3 times that. Now, that was true sometimes, not all the time, but it was a good, opening gambit, right? So John immediately goes, "Oh, really? Yeah, that's interesting." And from that moment on, I was Tom Triple Scale Scott.
I was wondering if you got a cool nickname being in the Blues Brothers, like they all have, like Bones Malone and Blue Lou.
Yeah, I was triple. They would just shorten the triple later. Anyway, so that's how that happened. That's how I became a blues brother. And we finished out the gig, recorded the album, which is called Briefcase Full of Blues. We had like a 35-minute opening act for Steve Martin. And of course, nobody'd heard this band before, live or otherwise. The reaction of the crowd was what we used to describe as a trout crowd. By that, we mean they're like, you want to like hook them, and they're like, jaw dropped, just astonishment at this blues machine that was driving towards them. So it was great fun.
And how long did that last?
Well, for me, I mean, I did that gig. Oh, God. Oh, you're bringing this stuff back to me. So that gig was over, and then the next thing was the movie, right? And I get a script.
Yeah.
It has a scene where I'm a dishwasher at Aretha Franklin's restaurant.
Oh.
Where Blue Lou was, right? I think that's where
McIntyre Murphy.
Yeah,
of course.
Exactly. And Blue Lou was great in it. And look, there were 3 of us blues brothers who, when it came time to commit to the movie, let me first say, would I have liked to have been in a Blues Brothers movie? Sure. But at that time, I had to weigh the price that it would exact from me, mostly in terms of time. And I knew I had been around movie making and TV shows enough to know that if you're a supporting player in a movie, they may never know when they want to use you. So you end up sitting in a trailer for 6 months, and you may get called at 5 a.m, or you may get called at 1 o'clock at night. And it's boring as hell. I don't mind telling you. I mean, you really got to want it bad to be willing to sit through that just to be in a movie. So here was the thing. Paul Schaefer, Steve Jordan, and I all had other things going on that loomed larger, let's say, in terms of our lives, our time, and potential success in our careers than being in the Blues Brothers movie. So I remember I got a very angry call from John Landis saying, "What are you doing, Tom? You'll regret this all your life." Just trying to shame me into coming back. And I said, "Look, I no, no, I'm not doing it."
Well, go ahead, damn it.
Now, here's the irony. So the movie comes out. Of course, it's a big hit. John was in L.A. and he opened the door to my studio, and I was sitting there, and he announced, the Blues Brothers have the #1 record and the #1 movie. I mean, he was like on top of the world, man. Success had come to him big time, and it was fun. Listen, I love John. His death was very, very tragic and unnecessary, but he was like, he had 2 sides. He could be a real Danny Aykroyd, in a letter to me after John passed, once described it as trance and venom. This was the kind of place he would go. But when he wasn't in that state, he was your Uncle Johnny. He was a cool, sweet, loving guy, and not to mention funny. So the movie's a big hit, and now they want to do a tour promoting the movie. And I got asked to come back and do the tour for the movie. And I get to which I did. I don't remember how many dates it was, but it was great fun. And it was, it was back with the boys again. And Atlantic Records presented me with a gold record for the soundtrack from the Blues Brothers movie, which I am not on.
It's a shame you weren't in the movie, because you would have performed Rawhide in the movie.
I would have.
Yes. Yeah.
The show you mentioned your dad worked on.
Rollin', rollin', rollin'. Yeah.
Theme from the TV show Rawhide. Thank you.
Exactly. So that was the sum total of my experience with the Blues Brothers. Now let's cut to this year. A guy in New Jersey called me. He gets celebrity guests to participate in an autograph signing festival that happens every year in Parsippany, New Jersey, at a place called the Chiller Theater.
Oh, we know it.
It really is the Parsippany Hilton, which becomes a giant venue for this convention.
Laker Jim used to go there every year.
Oh, really? Okay, so you know. So this venue is houses like 100 celebrities from all kinds of, bit players and secondary cast members and a few, major celebrities. This guy said, listen, let's go as the Blues Brothers. And Paul was in for a minute, Paul Schaefer, then he backed out. Willie Hall, who was played drums in the movie, was in for a minute and then he was out. So the four of us that were left was me and my two original friends, Lulu Marini, Tom Bones Malone, and Murphy Dunn, who was the pianist in the movie.
Yeah.
Who was I had come to know anyway, a very nice guy. So the four of us went to this convention, and I got to say, we made quite a bit of money that weekend, given all the times I've signed albums just for free.
Right.
But man, they came in droves, and they were great, and they were, the fans were very, very nice, and they wanted to know anything I could tell them about, the Blues Brothers, and I told some of them. I told the stories I just told you, and it was great. It was a great kind of reunion for at least the four of us.
But there was only one fan that asked you about Fletch that weekend, and that was me.
Oh, that's right. So that's where we met. That's right. I'm sorry, I completely forgot. That's where we met.
Well, that's a perfect segue to Fletch, because I know fans listening at home right now are dying to hear this story.
Okay.
Now, as we talked about at the top of the show, Tom was hired as the original composer to the score of Fletch. And up until about 2 weeks or so before the movie was to be released,
right,
Faltermeyer was not involved at all. So I'm sure there's a lot to unpack here, but Tom, take us back to the beginning of your Fletch story and how it all got started.
Well, it got started because of my friendship with Chevy Chase, which had nothing to do with the Blues Brothers or Belushi or Aykroyd or any of them. Because, of course, as you probably know, Chevy only did one season on Saturday Night Live, and he left, and which caused no end to the consternation from the other cast members. And he had he had burned a few bridges along the way, and that's something he had quite a talent for, I might add.
You've heard.
He was. I mean, he was another guy like John. He sort of had two sides to him. He could be very nice and just a dear guy, sweet guy, and then this other a-hole, Go figure. Anyway, so I don't know whether you know the lady Libby Titus. She actually was a singer on Columbia, had her own solo album in the 70s. She became and is currently Mrs. Donald Fagen. She married
Steely Dan.
Right, Donald from Steely Dan. So we were friends, just acquaintances. She called me one day and said, "Listen, my friend Chevy Chase would really like to meet you. I know he'd like you because he loves jazz, and why don't I'll meet you at his house." And she gave me the address, and so I went there. And in fact, he loved jazz. He made that very clear. And the funny thing is, he could play on any given day. He could recite a famous jazz pianist Bill Evans tune called Waltz for Debbie. He could play it perfectly. And then the next day, it was like a child trying to play it. Oh, man, look at you.
I was born.
It was just so, and I think this is true of him generally. He had no discipline. You know what I mean? Focus and really concentrate on getting a craft, whether it be comedy or piano playing or whatever it is. I don't think he had the patience. I think he was just, I don't know. That was in a sense, I think that was his downfall in many ways. But in any case, we became buddies, friends. And the next thing I know, he's doing this movie, and he talked the director, Michael Ritchie, I think was his name, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Into having me, and because I had a few credits, so he talked the director into having me do the score. And I don't know whether we discussed this. We probably did. But when you've got a movie like Fletch, and the same thing was true with Neighbors, which, as I said, I've also got that score thrown out. But the philosophy of a movie that's got basically a dramatic movie with comedic, things happening off to the side, but they aren't the focus of the movie. The focus is the story, whatever it is. I mean, Fletch is a detective. I don't even remember what the story was anymore. It's been too long. But he's got to solve something, right? He's got to file murder or whatever the hell it is.
Something about bone cancer. It doesn't matter.
All right. Okay. So I wrote a score that was, by its very nature, very contemporary but dramatic, and let the comedy play off by itself. And they dubbed the movie. They previewed it for Tom. I can't think of his last name at Universal at the time. The president.
Maybe Tom Pollock.
Right. And what happened was, right around that time, a little movie called Beverly Hills Cop came out, and the composer of that movie, Harold Faltermeyer, had written a thing which played all through that movie, which went dun 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 dun.
XOF.
And of course, I used to joke about that because you got a chase scene, dun 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 dun. Love theme, dun 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 dun. Stalking criminals, the bad guys, dun dun dun. Whatever. One size fits all. But whether that philosophy is correct or not, the point is that tune became a hit. And I think Tom, what's his name, at Universal, saw the movie and said, well, there's nothing in here that's going to be a hit. Let's get that guy who did Beverly Hills Cop. So my score was thrown out. I don't know whether the director, I don't know whether any of the actual movie makers, the producer or director, had any say in it, or whether what their thoughts were. I never got that far. I never heard from any of them again.
How does that conversation go though, Tom? It's like they call you and just say, sorry. I mean, that's got to be a big blow.
Well, the call came. I believe the call. I know the call came from my agent.
Okay.
I believe who had found it out and told me. And first my reaction was, geez, it was a great score. I really wanted to have it in the movie. And my agent very, very correctly says, Tom, did the check clear? Well, yes, it did. Okay, you know what? They can do anything with the music that they want to do. That's their right. So, get over it. So I did.
Yeah. But do you own the rights to that music though, correct?
Oh no.
No. Okay.
No. Unless you're, a Henry Mancini or John Williams or something like that, it is almost universally a prerequisite of your getting to compose the music for a television show or a movie, that the publishing entity, whoever it is, usually associated with the film company, is the publisher. And what that means is that the publisher actually owns the music, and the publisher and the composer or composers share 50-50 in whatever royalties accrue. So that was the deal. And they own it. They can do whatever the hell they want.
So unfortunately, that great score just lives in limbo somewhere because it really can't be used by you, and it probably won't be used by them.
Well, you know what? No one would ever know if I stole it back, actually.
Yeah.
And if there's not a whole lot of money to be made, it's not worth it for lawyers to go after anybody. I doubt that anyone will come after me because I haven't, but I'm saying if I did, I don't think it'd be a problem.
Do you think that they back catalog a song or the score that you made and maybe think maybe in another movie someday they'll use it?
Well, it's possible. I've never, I will say, not in that case. I have certainly on my royalty statements from BMI have seen that pieces of my music have been inserted in other movies and television shows. That's not uncommon, but not that one, I don't think.
How much direction do they give you when you're creating a score? I mean, obviously, you must see the movie with no music. Do they give you an idea of what they're looking for in each scene?
That varies. Okay, some directors are kind of give you a general idea. See, back I remember I wrote the music for one of the original Planet of the Apes movies, And at that time, a guy named Lionel Newman, who was part of the Newman family, which included his nephew Randy Newman and Alfred Newman, a famous film composer, and others. The music supervisor of the studio really was the guy that called the shots. I mean, I saw Lionel Newman throw a producer out of a recording session once because he thought he was being a jerk. Get out of here. Let us do our job. Leave it. We don't care what you think. So it's not like that anymore, I guarantee you. But in any case, it all depends. I don't remember the meetings I had with Michael Ritchie. I'm sure I did. I will tell you that my father was briefly involved in some of the composing for the movie The Color Purple, which Quincy Jones was the music overseer, but there were several composers who we hired to do various scenes. And I managed to obtain a copy of Steven Spielberg's notes as to what the music should do. It scared the hell out of me. I don't mind telling you. He was like every detail, what he wanted the music to do, almost second by second. It was like, oh my God. And I found it just stunningly specific.
Would that be easier or harder to follow?
Well, I just thought if I had to write a music based on this, I'd be like, I'm afraid to do anything. The fact that John Williams has thrived with that, with direction like that, is just one more reason why this guy is so great.
And he's still going. 91 years old, is still going.
He's still going strong. He's a beautiful guy.
He certainly is. Okay, Fletch fans, it's time. We teased a big surprise, and here it is. I asked Tom if he had any idea where the original score to Fletch was. His response, I have no idea.
Idea at all? Some idea.
But he went home, and Tom dug through 40 years of his archives, and he found it.
I did.
And he's going to share it with us today.
Okay.
Tom, is it safe to say that in 40 years, no one has heard this music? No, well, let me ask you, who has heard it?
Well, the people that recorded it, my band. Other than that, I think that's about it. And the people involved with the film who had to cut it in and all, but it hasn't been heard publicly since 84, that movie, or 80?
85, yeah.
85, yeah.
Now, I know I can speak for the three of us, as well as probably the Fletch fans listening at home. We feel very special and honored to be joining this unique, select group of people that have heard this.
Yes.
Because fans just never get to hear this type of stuff. So this is really cool.
Now, which one are you playing first?
So I guess we'll play the credits.
The main title?
Because the main title comes after the opening scene. So if you're going to play this from the start of the movie, it would be that opening
cue?
Yeah, opening cue.
And if you're trying to match it up in your head at home, this plays over the title sequence introing the movie. Basically runs through every actor that appears in the movie, and a minute and 24 seconds later, fades into Chevy on the Beach.
Now, I can totally see that playing over the title sequence, which is something that movies don't do anymore.
Right.
Yeah, honestly, it's not too far off from what we heard in the opening credits of Fletch Lives.
Yes.
It's a different variation of the Baltimore theme, but I mean, there's the same kind of tone there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it shares some innate DNA, Fletch DNA.
You must have stolen it from me, damn it.
Wait up, let's hear this part. it immediately gives you that mystery vibe.
Is that what I assume that's what you were going for, Tom, was that kind of mystery, because there's a little jazzy influence in there too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Maybe a little noirish, a little noir going on there, you know?
That's right. Exactly. That's the way it struck me. So that's what
Greg Mottola was going for in the new Fletch movie. It was a very jazzy soundtrack.
Right.
So and he had mentioned more than once that he was really influenced by old noir films and that kind of score. So it sounds like that's where you were going as well.
Oh, yeah, and I'm a lover of noir too. It's great.
Okay, now the next track that Tom was able to find for us is what he calls the title sequence. Now this immediately follows the credits music and essentially would be where the Faltermeyer Fletch theme sits in the movie, where Chevy does the voiceover and sets up what he's doing on the beach. Now listen, we all love the Faltermeyer Fletch theme. We're not going to pretend just because Tom's here that we don't.
Right.
But let's listen to this with an open mind, pretend we've never heard that music, and let's try to see what this would sound like as the original Fletch theme. I don't know about you guys, but I'm digging it. I think it fits. It definitely gives you that mystery dark vibe, a little bit of a different feel to start the movie. But it definitely can fit as a Fletch theme during stakeouts, during intense moments, during Fletch voiceovers. I think it gives you that 80s feel. Same as the Faltermeyer theme. Definitely has an 80s feel to it.
I know, right? It sounds very 80s to me.
Yo, that immediately took me back. Is that you on saxophone, Tom? Is that you?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Sure.
I thought when I heard it, I immediately wondered if that was you.
Oh, yeah.
How many people scoring this? Do you have any idea how many?
Yeah. Well, let's see. There was drums and percussion, maybe 2 percussion, so that's 3. Then there was bass, Abe Laboriel, great bass player. Guitar, Paul Jackson, and another guitarist, Hugh McCracken, played. He did all the slide stuff. Keyboard, maybe two keyboards. I think it was just a great big rhythm section.
Yeah.
That's my recollection. I think that's pretty much what's in there.
As I'm sitting here listening to you talk, I'm kind of fantasizing about the movie and how this music would fit in. And I think the listeners at home, as well as myself, would benefit from backtracking a little bit, taking Chevy's vocals and placing it over this portion of the music.
Okay.
Stripping the Faltermeyer theme, putting in this theme, and seeing how this would work out. So let's take a listen to what that would sound like.
My name is Erwin Fletcher. I'm an investigative reporter for a Los Angeles paper. You probably read my stuff under the byline of Jane Doe or The Hey, It's Better than Erwin. The last 3 weeks, I've been loitering around the beach, trying to pass for an amiable minor league junkie. I don't nod out or drool, it's too obvious. Act like you don't give a crap and you fit right in.
This is really picked up, huh? What is it, the Colombian National Holiday?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Sounds pretty damn good. That fits.
That's great.
Did you know that was going to fit?
I did. I knew it would fit. I'd seen it in my head. I mean, that's what's in. You know, if any film composer worth his salt is visualizing the scene and composing. You know, you're not trying to it's not like fitting a square peg in a round hole.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is what the film says to me musically. And
I'm just thinking about how many places that fits. That
I know. I love the beginning.
I love it.
I know, it's very like, oh.
Something's happening.
Yeah,
Here.
exactly.
Something's going to happen.
It's something foreboding, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, if you get that from it, then mission accomplished.
How long does something, I know that we're just talking in generalities,
Yeah.
but I mean, like, how long would something like this take from composing to recording? I mean, what's the time frame on something like this?
Well, I don't remember in this particular case exactly, but I would say from the inception of the first meeting where we're okay, now the composing begins from this point forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
Let me back up a little bit and say that there's kind of an inherent problem in being a composer for films, in the sense that adding in the music is at the very end of the process. The process begins, of course, with a book or a script, and then they got to figure out who's going to. The studio decides to do it. They've got to decide who's the producer, the director, and all the other tech people, and so on. And then the movie's filmed. That takes months and months, and then they start editing. And right around that time, they want to start talking to composers if they haven't already. So I ran into this, not in this particular case, but I've run into this before, that somewhere during the shooting, the producer and the director start arguing, having differences. So by the time I brought in, there's a full-blown, war going on between two factions. Or maybe the studio's at odds with the director. There's so much room for unpleasantness to happen. That you're very lucky if you get all through that. Everybody's like loving it. So I've been caught in the middle of what do I do when this guy says this to me and this guy says this? Traditionally, it's the director. It's supposed to be the director's vision. That's my job, as I would define it, to help musically help the director realize his vision, whatever that is. So one of my point was, while I'm composing music to the version of the film that I have or that I have been shown, things could change. And of course, that affects the music greatly. If a scene becomes shorter or longer or gets changed or deleted or screwed with in some other way, that obviously, because music is about exact timings. And so that's that. So you have to deal with that. So, I'd guess 2.5 to 3 months, it would be the average time from start to finish. Because in a movie like that, there's, that's probably an hour and 15-minute movie, but 75 minutes. There could be as much as 40 minutes, 45 minutes of music. And that's like a whole album's worth of music.
Yeah.
When we used to have albums, which we don't anymore, but back in the day.
From what we've heard, Faltermeyer only had a few weeks to compose his version. Have you ever been on that side of, hey, you don't have 2 to 3 months, you have a few weeks, can you bang this?
Well, I'm sure I have. I'm trying to remember. And look, you just have to crank out something. It may not be your best work, or you may end up coffee and things to keep you up.
Yeah.
Beyond your normal schedule to get it done. There is a certain panic that sets in if you're on a deadline, which kind of I did so much TV and film during that period, the 70s and 80s, that I thought of myself as kind of a deadline composer. Give me the deadline, and because I can't think of anything until I know that there's on Wednesday I got to show up with some shit,
Okay, so now if that wasn't awesome enough, Tom also found 2 chase scene tracks.
Yes.
Now he's not 100% sure which scenes these belong to.
I don't remember.
But let's think about the Fletch movie.
Okay.
There's 2 kind of chase scenes that I can think of that have music to them. One is the car chase scene with the kid.
Stolen car.
And the second one is when Gummy's getting arrested and Fletch and the other junkies are running from the cops. So I'm going to say, because of the length of each track, I think this one that we're about to listen to probably is the car chase scene.
Okay.
When he commandeers the car. So let's lay that dialogue over this one and see if it works. And we're hearing this for the first time, so let's give this a listen.
Afternoon, Smog Patrol. Had your emissions checked?
No, sir.
Fluorocarbons, ozone?
No, sir.
Well, let's check it out. What do you say? Hey, smells pretty good. Catch it. Integral emphasis. How do you catch it? Shut eye. Just stay back and enjoy. Try to breathe through your nose. I always use a little chewing gum on these rides. It filters out the pollutants.
Oh, shit!
I wish you got some good grill work there. Keep out the ozone. I gotta get this thing up to 95. Check out the fluorocarbon output. Don't worry about the speed limit here. That's why we got the police escort.
You come!
As far as you know.
Are you gonna take me to jail for car theft?
Why, did you steal the car?
I sure did!
Well, I'm not even sure that's a crime anymore. There's been a lot of changes in the law.
No!
Nothing, I just a little game I play with my buddies. Kind of a hide and seek kind of a thing. And they love it. A little slipstreaming, and whoa, there's Fred. Won't he be surprised? Hey, Freddie, how's the herpes? Does it hurt?
Pull over!
I did pull over before. I'll pull over later. Pull over!
Wow.
That's just obviously a little taste, but I think it works. Had we never heard Dan Hartman's Get Out of Town, music like this would definitely fit. We wouldn't think anything of it. And I think, in a way, it almost works better with no vocals in the song.
Undoubtedly.
Kind of allows Chevy's comedy to be the focal point and no audio competition. By the way, a few years later, this might have been stolen as the Airwolf theme.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? It was a style of that time. I think there was a group called Tangerine Dream.
Oh, yes. I remember them.
Very repetitive, very, rhythmic. Actually, some of that stuff with groups like Tangerine Dream, they did electronically. I wanted to do it acoustically. So I actually had a wonderful jazz musician, one of the great jazz musicians of all time, Victor Feldman, playing the marimba. He's doing the just on a marimba, with mallets.
Wow.
And Richard T. played piano, one of the great pianists, a New York-based pianist who was one of the great pianists ever. There'll never be another one like him. And I just had all the, listen, I when I listen to that, I just think very fondly of the actual recording process and what a joy it was to be in the room with these great players.
So almost 40 years ago, that music can still put you in the recording studio that day.
Hell yeah.
A great memory.
All right. We got one more chase track. I'm going to link this up to the Gummy police chase under the pier. And I'll sprinkle in some movie quotes and sounds so you guys get a feel for kind of what I was thinking. All right, let's give this one a listen.
Larry, it's me. Listen, see if you've got anything on Stanwyck from the time he used to live in Utah. Yeah, and also check out a realtor in Provo. His name is Swarthout.
Take off, Fletch! Hey! What are you doing?
Tell me again. It's weird.
Hey, slow down. Let's go. Oh, man.
Hey, what are you doing, man? He's defensive. Get up. What are you doing?
Fletch! Hey, you're really nuts. You okay?
Yeah, I feel like $100.
Yeah.
Wow, there's so much soul in this music.
You got to check your records. I swear to God, that song was used in Roadhouse, and they may not be telling me.
You think so?
I know it was.
Well, again, it's a style that was very. But now I had programmed that in a sequencer, and then let the guys kind of make up parts around it, telling them I wanted to do some kind of thing here. I gave it in very general terms, knowing that these guys would just come up with great stuff.
Well, that was my question, Thomas. How much of that is improv versus what you wrote?
Yeah, it's a mix.
Yeah.
I know it's this long. I know at this bar, it's got to change. There's a point where the mood changes. And I suggest maybe to make that mood, why don't you use layout? And you know what I mean? I just sort of give general directions. I got that from Quincy Jones years ago. He was writing a score to one of the, back in the days when we liked Bill Cosby. He had a show before the famous one. He had one where he was a gym coach. It was sort of a sitcom or whatever the hell it was. Mm-hmm. And Quincy wrote the score, and I was in the band playing on some of the things. It was always a small band, and Quincy didn't write any music. He would just go around with a stopwatch draped around his neck, on a chain. And he'd go, this scene has to be, okay, you do this, and you try something like this. And it was just, and it was great. It was so fun. And it took a lot longer than the score where all the music's written out. So maybe the producers were, PO'd that it cost them more than you, but the music was totally unique because of that. Nobody was doing that at that time. Everything was like very traditional film score. We have music and we have studio musicians. We conduct them. Now Quincy was like, no, let's make some stuff up here, and it has a sound all its own. And so that lesson was not lost on me.
Well, let me tell you, what's not lost on us is how uniquely rare and special today has been.
Same.
What we just listened to is something fans don't get to listen to.
Yeah.
Us in particular, we're a fandom that has never been given deleted scenes. We've always been on the hunt for something. Hearing your music with the movie laid over it, it's almost like we were given some cut scenes. It's almost like we were treated to some cutting room floor Fletch stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And to have it done on our Fletchcast, the fact that Tom Scott is no longer just a mysterious name on the trailer or the poster. Your music is now part of the Fletch world. And I think that's pretty damn cool. I'm so happy we were able to be a part of it today.
This was amazing.
Awesome.
Now, Tom, you mentioned your friendship with Chevy Chase. Did that help you get the gig on his talk show?
Yeah.
As his band leader?
Yes.
Now, what was that like?
When he called me and said he wanted to do it, because I had just done the Pat Sajak show, which had gone a year and a half.
Right.
And Pat, unfortunately, was not either, didn't have the real enthusiasm to really try and make it a hit. And I don't think he had the makeup either, because he was not a stand-up comic. When the monologues we did, and the poor writers, they were doing their best, but Pat didn't know how to deliver jokes, and he would come out sometimes, and when he would deliver do the setup and then deliver the punchline and actually back up a little bit, because he was like, are they going to throw I don't know what he was thinking, but let's put it this way, he lacked confidence. Because if you're going to be good at that thing, you got to believe in your joke. And the other thing was, we had, God, I haven't thought of this in a while. We had a sea of blue hair in our audiences. They had to go out and actually bus people in from, I guess, senior citizen homes. I don't know where they got them all.
Maybe the Universal tour.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. I remember one night, Harry Shearer, from Harry from
The Simpsons,
Spinal Tap.
Yes, of course.
And a friend of mine, he was on the show, and I forget why he was obviously, I don't know, promoting something, and he did some jokes which just went straight over the heads of the audience and out the door, and I'm across the studio set is set up where the desk and the guest seats are on one side and the bandstand's on the other, but I could hear enough and read lips enough to know what happened. We went to commercial, and Pat Sajak says to Harry Shearer, he says, "Look, I'm sorry about the audience," and Harry says, "What audience?"
Oh wow.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so back to Chevy.
Oh wait, sorry to cut you off, but Chevy was on the very first episode of the Pat Sajak show.
Oh, I forgot that.
Remember.
Oh my God, he was.
He was there to promote Fletch Lives.
Oh,
that's what I mentioned earlier. There have been several corners that we've turned and run right into you.
He probably mentioned me, probably, didn't he? Or not?
Mm-hmm.
He did.
Probably did.
I'll play for you what Chevy said.
You know, we were talking about Tommy Scott a second ago, and I was saying that this is, honestly, I always say this, the best reed man in the country.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
Wow. So there we go.
Cool.
I'm sure it's been a while.
A while? Jeez. Decades.
Well, I don't know if this will jog your memory, but when Pat Sajak was introducing Chevy, he couldn't remember the name of the Fletch movie that he was bringing Chevy out to promote.
I'm tickled to death that this guy is here tonight. He is an Emmy Award winner for his work in Saturday Night Live. He's now become a big motion picture star, and he has another Fletch movie coming out. I don't know, Son of Fletch or Fletch Returns or Here's Your Fletch. He'll tell us in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, Chevy Chase.
Unbelievable, man. How can you do
He did the exact same thing, by the way, at the end of the interview, too.
Fletch, it's called Fletch
Lives.
Yeah. I knew that, and that's out in March.
As far as you know.
You gotta be kidding.
Oh, gosh. I've got another Pat Sajak story I just remembered. So,
yes.
You know, the most extreme example of disinterest in a guest I have ever seen was, it was some soap opera person. And listen, admittedly, they're not exactly, you know, geniuses in any sense or interesting in most senses. So if you're going to have them on, you got to do a little work. So this guest came on. I don't remember if it was male or female. I just don't remember. What I do remember is that Pat was borderline rude in his, you know, almost showing contempt for the guest. And we went to commercial, and I stepped on the button and I could talk to the director. And I said, we're doing this over, right? And he says, no, we're keeping it. I said, really? And at that moment, we're in a commercial. So I don't know. Sometimes we play during commercials most of the time, but all I remember is thinking, I came this close to taking off my headset, walking over to Pat and saying, "Don't ever do that again."
That's amazing.
I can't believe he lasted as long as he did.
I mean, that's how pissed I was.
And it lasted longer than Chevy's show.
Oh, much longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but see, why I thought it would be good to do the Pat Sajak show was I had seen him. There's a show, local morning show called AMLA on ABC, on Channel 7 here, ABC. And he had sub-hosted a couple of mornings, and I just happened to have the TV on, and I thought, geez, he's really good at this. You know, he was funny and glib. He didn't have to do an opening monologue. He's just out there with whoever the co-host, the lady was. I can't remember who it was. So when the offer came in, I thought, okay, Pat, this is what Pat wants to do. This is great. It's going to be a good thing. And I went and met the producer, nice guy, and I got a great band. I'll say that, man. I'm very, very proud of them. But Pat's heart really wasn't in it. And we came on the same time as just a week from Arsenio Hall. Mm-hmm. So in the press, it immediately became Arsenio Hall versus Pat Sajak. Right. You know, it was like they manufactured a war. Now, when you're doing a show like that 5 nights a week, it's all you can do to just keep up with each dailies. You know, you're not paying attention to what they're doing over there. But of course, in the press, they got nothing else to do, so why not? But we lost the war because I had seen Arsenio Hall enough times to know this guy really wants it bad, and he got all his friends to strong-armed all his friends to come on and had this enthusiasm and had an audience that was enthusiasm, and we got blue-haired ladies. I mean, it's just that's not a war you can win,
right?
And plus, he just wasn't. He had the quiz show to fall back on, which is exactly what he did.
You get the Lakers? Yeah, I'm lucky if I can get Wheel of Fortune.
That's great. And plus, Johnny was still on at the time too.
Johnny was on. So at that time, there were like 4. There was or 3. Wait, us, Johnny, Arsenio. Yeah, 3 major ones. And there's a few other that had come and gone before that. Anyway, when Chevy called me and said, "I'm doing a show for Fox," which, by the way, had just decided to make the move to be the 4th major network. It was just 3. Mm-hmm. Right. And I said, I remember this very well. I said, "Chevy, I appreciate the offer. I just don't think the world is ready for yet another talk show." And he said, well, and you guys probably won't remember this because you're too young, but he said, do you remember the old Steve Allen late night show? Now, Steve Allen had a show in black and white. And I was a kid, and I loved it because he was right on Vine Street there next to a place called the Hollywood Ranch Market, which was just a little local market, with open air. Steve Allen, and he was so good at just making something out of nothing. He would go across the street with a microphone on a long cord, literally across the street, and just start talking to customers in the market. And it would be fantastic, hysterical. He'd just make stuff happen, and be so glib and funny. So Chevy says to me, that's the kind of show I want to do. I said, well, that interests me. That sounds good. Not another thing with guests and hawking their latest products, whatever it is. Fantastic.
And Tom Scott and the Hollywood Express. Now here he is, Chevy Chase.
Well, Fox had other ideas because they were trying so hard to show that we can have the best guests and we can do what Johnny does and what the rest of them do. That's all they wanted. Is a show with guests hawking products. And so Chevy wasn't good at that. I never found out whether he would have been good at the other thing, just going out, and I never had a chance. I have a feeling he wouldn't be as good as Steve Allen. Steve Allen was exceptionally good at that kind of thing. And, we were on for 6 weeks and off.
Did you do any test shows and then?
I think we did. I hope we did. I know we did on the Sajak show, 3 or 4 of them. Which is great to kind of get the feel of it.
Yeah,
we must have done test shows. I don't really remember much. And I remember he had a guy who was a basketball player to shoot hoops, kind of a distraction. And he had, he had a piano installed in his desk, which again,
yes,
he could be great one night and just suck the next night. It was and a fish tank behind him, just like all this shit. I don't know even why. But what I do remember, the first show where he had Goldie Hawn on was a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
It was the interview was awful. And they started, what you always hate when two people, they start talking about stuff that only they are in on. Like, remember when the
inside jokes.
Like the audience might as well not even be there because they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Didn't
she start singing to him?
God, I hope not.
I'm not mistaken. Or there was I think there was a part when she started.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't remember.
It was her son's birthday, and he was there. And it was something about a birthday cake. I don't know. It was just
drop the cake into the crowd.
On the guy's lap. Yeah.
God, it's god awful.
So how was Chevy during this time? I mean, did he seem enthusiastic about it? Did he? Was he like Pat?
No, here's the thing. I don't know whether this happened right away or very shortly, because it was only 6 weeks. It had to happen pretty quick. They started calling him in. Lucy something, who was the head of Fox at that time, or the head of Fox primetime program, or whatever their title was. She was the boss, anyway, of our show for Fox. She would call a meeting after each show. I didn't attend them, but I know that Chevy went in there and he just probably got pasted, and asked to do things that, they wanted it to be Johnny Carson. I'm sure he's not Johnny Carson, and never was, and never. Chevy, here's the biggest problem: Chevy didn't really like people that much. He didn't really give a shit about them, and so it makes it difficult to to seem like you care and do an enthusiastic interview. So those meetings, I know, were just really hard on him. Now, 10 years later, my phone rings on my car, and I pick it up, and he says, "Hello, asswipe," which what he would call me from time to time. Maybe he called other people that, I don't know. I said, "Oh, hi, Chevy. How are you, man? It's a long time no hear from. How are you?" He, in his way, I think it was an attempt to apologize to me for what he admitted was a lot of self-medicating. Now, I don't know what that meant, but I knew that I realized that part of his condition was due to his drug use. Yeah. And it certainly didn't help him. He was probably just taking them to numb himself from the pain of having to do something that he didn't really want to do.
Or falling off of Christmas trees and everything else he did on the original SNL show too, you know?
Yeah, maybe there was some brain damage from all that. Oh God.
Johnny and him didn't like each other because they were amping him up to be the replacement for Johnny.
Well, there was a period where that was true. I don't know how Johnny felt about it. I guess when there's a potential young gun in town, I suppose to the old guy, it's always a bit intimidating. There'll never be another Johnny Carson. He was unique and great in his way, as was Steve Allen and a few of the other guys, but all in their unique ways. But neither Pat Sajak or Chevy Chase were cut out to be a late night talk show host. That's just the bottom line.
Especially with Arsenio being so powerful at that time.
Yeah, that's right. That certainly didn't help.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people that are listening and weren't around for that time don't understand how much of an audience Arsenio had and how much of a megastar he was at that time.
Right. Well, he just exuded enthusiasm and, hey, we're going to have a great show tonight. And, he meant it.
Electric audience with the whoop, 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 whoop and everything,
Right. Pat was like, just announcing. He's like announcing.
Did you ever talk to any other, did you talk to Doc or anybody like that before going on to maybe?
Oh, Doc and I have remained friends to this day.
To this day, I watch old Johnny Carson clips and Doc is so talented. I mean, he was a huge part of that show.
And the guy practiced trumpet, 3 hours a day for every day of his life. I mean, Good Lord, I don't have that kind of work ethic. I'm sorry, but I'm a saxophone player. You don't need it. He depends on these lips, so they've got to be. He's got to keep them up. You can get away with not playing that much and still sound pretty good on the sax.
Luckily, you didn't get the call for the Magic Hour, the Magic Johnson show. Sheila E. got.
Oh, that's right. That lasted about the same length as ours. Jeez.
They were throwing anything at the wall and seeing what would.
I know. And Magic seemed like a pleasant enough guy, but he had no chops. That's to do that 5 nights a week. That is a gig for which you have to be uniquely qualified.
Mm-hmm. Hey Tom, by any chance, have you seen the new Fletch movie?
I have not. Would I like it?
Yeah,
I think you would. It's called Confess Fletch. John Hamm plays Fletch in this one.
No, I won't like it because I will say to myself, why didn't he call me?
And as we mentioned earlier, the director, Greg Mottola, huge fan of jazz. Huge fan of Fletch. He kind of fantasized that maybe since Fletch is a LA guy, he's a fan of maybe West Coast jazz. So he laid his favorite, I forget if it's Chet Baker or Chet
Baker.
Chet Baker,
tunes over the movie, thinking the studio will never go for it. And when they sort of bit on the jazz theme, he was able to put together a soundtrack that sort of like a dream comes true of him getting to make a Fletch movie and use jazz as the soundtrack.
Wow, awesome. I should get to know him. I like any director who likes jazz is good in my book.
We're hoping for a long string of new Fletch movies from this director.
Oh wow, okay. What's his name again?
Greg Mottola. He's a big supporter of ours. He's a big fan of the show.
Oh, great.
He listens. I'm sure with you as the subject of today's episode, he's definitely listening.
Okay. Hi, Greg. I'm still available.
What are you working on now, Tom? What's
doing? Well, I have my own radio show, an hour a week on K-Jazz here in Los Angeles. Just finished show number 110, so I guess it's going to last.
Congratulations!
And I plan to do podcasts. I'm doing the guy who does that another great cop show with jazz in it, Michael O'Connelly.
Oh yes,
Bosch.
Michael O'Connelly, who does Bosch and the Lincoln Lawyer and stuff like that. Yes.
I'm doing a podcast with him.
Oh, great.
And I'm doing Rita Wilson, Tom Hanks' wife, who's great. And I'm doing Tim Matheson, Barbara Hershey. So right. I've got a lot of that going on. I discovered that I really love doing the research. I love to, like you guys, I love to go and interview somebody where I know what the hell I'm talking about. Because God knows, I actually years ago did a radio interview with a guy, and I sat down and he said to me, "Now, have you ever played with a band before?" But I enjoy it. I do. I use Wikipedia. I use any other sources I can find, and it's fun.
I got to ask you more. Talk about working with. You mentioned Fagan and Steely Dan, and obviously they have a big jazz influence. But that album is
Asia.
Asia, and that band is just. I mean, they're
I could not agree with you more. There's something, like we said, the movie music that I wrote for Fletch, it sounds like the 80s. I mean, it's unmistakable. Asia is maybe the only, certainly one of the very few records I've done that seems timeless. It could have been done last year or 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or in 1976 when we actually did it. It's got this quality that's just amazing to me. I think largely because it's acoustic. It's very little electronic stuff that puts it in the 70s, 80s synthesizer category. And it's just so expertly played. And the combination of those amazing, mysterious lyrics of theirs and Fagen's voice and great songwriting and great arranging and great recording. That's just a classic. And I got that gig because I had a mutual friend. I suppose I can say this now. He was a pot dealer, and Walter Becker and I used to go to the same guy. And one day, I'd met him there a couple of times. I didn't have any association with Steely Dan up to that point. I was acquainted with a couple of their hits, but not really that far into it. But he says to me, "Look, we're making our new record, and we're going to need some horn section stuff. Yeah, you do that stuff, don't you?" I said, "Yeah, I do. In fact, I do." And so I went to the Village Recorders where they were working in West Los Angeles. Met Donald and the producer Gary Katz, who I could never figure out what Gary Katz did. I liked him, but he was just like Donald Fagen would go, "I think this would be good here. What do you think, Gary?" And Gary would go, "Oh yeah." He was just like a yes man.
Yes man, yeah.
I think. But obviously he was there for whatever reason, and he gave those guys comfort in whatever way. You never know. Anyway, so they gave me a reel-to-reel tape of the songs, and the only input they said was, "We don't like high trumpets, like screaming trumpets." Fine, no problem. So I walked in on a Monday night with these 6 arrangements they had never heard, and 8 guys, and lo and behold, I managed to get all 6 arrangements done in 4 nights in the same week.
Wow.
So I lucked out there.
I'm telling you, if I'm not in a good mood, I think Peg is probably one of my favorite songs of all time. I mean, there's not a better song out there. It's I agree
with you.
Everything about it is just a great song.
Right. I know. Every aspect of their music is like top notch.
It is.
So I was lucky again. I'm lucky to be in the room, man, and share that experience.
Lowdown's one of my, is a great song.
Yep. That would be me.
And let's not forget that Chevy Chase was a very early drummer in Steely Dan.
Yeah,
that's right.
See, it all comes full circle. 6 degrees of Tom Scott.
That's great.
Well, Tom, I just want to thank you so much for your time today.
Right,
for the laughs, for the stories, and most importantly, for letting us hear the music of Fletch. To have the original score played on our platform, on our Fletchcast, means the absolute world to us. This will go down in the annals of Fletch history.
Yep.
The lore around the original score has finally been answered, and we just want to thank you so much.
Well, you guys are a pleasure to talk to, and I thank you for indulging me.
Everyone, you can follow Tom Scott on social media at Tom Scott Jazzman, one word, on Instagram and TikTok. On there, he's got tons of great stories and how Michael Jackson and Growing Pains. Oh, we didn't even get to Growing Pains. And don't forget to listen to his podcast, the Tom Scott Podcast Express. It's great. Definitely looking forward to that Matheson episode. And head over there, grab a few, and you'll be hooked. Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
For Jake, Bob, and Tom Scott, I'm Laker Jim. Thanks for listening, Fletch fans. We'll talk to you next time.
You got it. Bye, guys.